Canton Confidential, the Karen Reed murder trial, starts right now.
The defendant kissed me.
And how did she kiss you?
Not like a friend. Defendant responded, "You're hot." I was attracted to her.
Right. Physically attractive.
I thought she was an attractive woman.
Romantically attractive.
I'm not going to go there. No, I don't agree with that.
Of course you're not going to go there, because that would put you in a very awkward position, wouldn't it, sir?
Judge.
Not at all.
Well, that was ATF agent Brian Higgins on the stand today, testifying for the Commonwealth in the trial against Karen Reed. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Canton Confidential. I'm JC Monahan. Glenn Jones has the night off. So today we wrapped up week 4 of testimony. The prosecution presented evidence today that included text messages spanning weeks between John O'Keefe's friend, Brian Higgins, and O'Keefe's girlfriend, Karen Reed. The question is, did it help or hurt the Commonwealth's case? And remember, earlier this week, we heard the defense say they promised fireworks from today's testimony. Here with highlights is our Eli Rosenberg live in Dedham. Eli.
And JC, that kiss and those texts, the focus of hours of testimony here today. Brian Higgins, the ATF agent, on the stand for the entire day. And after all was said in court, after the reading of those texts, Karen Reed's lawyers left the courthouse here this evening and said those texts from Karen were not a motive for murder.
As we were walking out, the defendant planted a kiss on me.
It only happened once, ATF agent Brian Higgins testified. But that kiss between him and Karen Reed, the focus of hours of testimony on Friday, as Reed's trial slowly grinds on. And text between Higgins and Reed taking center stage.
Defendant said, "I'm glad you came over tonight," with some type of face. I responded, "Me too."
Higgins wanted several people at 34 Fairview the night before Boston police officer John O'Keefe's body was found out front of that Canton house. Prosecutors introducing the texts they say were exchanged in the weeks before O'Keefe died.
Defendant responded, "Do you like me?" I said, "Yes," from jump. Defendant said, "When was jump?" I said, "First time I saw you." You know, I'm not proud of these text messages. It is what it is. I take responsibility for them. But, you know, John was a friend at the same time, and I certainly wasn't. If they were at the end of the relationship, they were at the end of their relationship. But I wasn't going to have somebody utilize me and weaponize me against somebody that I liked.
O'Keefe's body was found the morning of January 29th. Reed, his girlfriend, has been charged in his death. Reed's lawyers have suggested Higgins and others could be responsible for O'Keefe's death. Reed's lawyers spending Friday afternoon grilling Higgins about his ties to Reed, how he felt when Reed stopped texting, and phone records that show Brian, Albert, and Higgins exchanged calls. One that lasted 1 second, the other that lasted 22 seconds, hours before O'Keefe's body was discovered.
What was your explanation?
Well, I used a phrase that people commonly used as a butt dial.
If you just go and just stand next to your client.
Towards the end of the day, Higgins bringing in his own personal attorney, as Reed's lawyer, Alan Jackson, grilled Higgins about a cell phone he got rid of as the investigation into what happened to O'Keefe picked up.
I do not have that phone anymore.
You've destroyed that phone, haven't you?
No, I threw the phone away.
Well, that's destroying the phone, isn't it?
I had every right to do that.
Did you remove the SIM card for that phone, drive onto a military base, throw the SIM card in one dumpster and the phone in a different dumpster?
That is not correct.
And that right there is exactly how court ended for the day. Higgins will be back on the stand when court resumes on Tuesday. JC.
Eli, there was something rather interesting that happened after jurors left for the day. Karen Reed going up to the judge with her lawyers. Not everybody stuck around to see it. What was that all about?
Yeah, the jurors had also left when that happened, and Karen Reed's lawyers very eager to set the record straight, saying that was not Karen Reed trying to reach any sort of plea deal after the testimony today. Rather, Alan Jackson, one of the lawyers you just heard from right there, well, he's not going to be able to make testimony on Tuesday, so that was just Reed waiving his appearance. It all capping another busy week in this trial. Live in Dedham, Eli Rosenberg, NBC 10 Boston.
Eli, thank you. Back here in studio tonight is our courtroom insider and commentator, Sue O'Connell. All right, Sue, Brian Higgins was basically asked to read all of those texts out loud, texts that were clearly meant to be private between two individuals. And as I'm hearing him, I'm thinking, he's doing this and Karen Reed is right in front of him. He's doing this and John O'Keefe's family is just off to his right. Was there a palpable change in mood, or how did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the air conditioning wasn't working. I know I said last week that there was no air conditioning. I was wrong. There was, but today there wasn't. So it was hot in there, and it was warm in there to begin with. And while he's reading those texts, it was both uncomfortable because, first of all, you're also thinking about, what if I had to read my texts?
Oh, for sure. No. That was definitely a thought that went across my head.
In an open court, you know, like anything you ever texted. Also, you're not writing text to be read. You're being quick and you're being short and you're answering what was 4 texts above that or 4 messages above that. So the confusion and awkwardness of the method of communication then being read by this ATF agent with high, smiley faces, are you hot? It was uncomfortable. But at the same time, the jury continues to pay close attention to what's happening and waiting to see with their curiosity where this is going to go, what's going to happen. But it definitely just made everybody's uncomfortable, both from your own embarrassment, if you had to do that,
yes,
and just the embarrassment of it happening.
Well, I looked at it as the first time, and I'm going to put air quotes around, sorry for the tacky moment, but that we heard Karen Reed's voice.
Right.
In other words, confirmed she did send those texts. So for the first time, we're hearing how she writes or how she replied to these things. But the question I would say there is, okay, so how is the defense reacting to hearing Karen's own words being read out loud by Brian Higgins?
Well, they are focusing more on the rest of that cross was about what time he entered the Canton Police Headquarters. They focus not on the feelings and the communications, but of the evidence that they are submitting, which the jurors have to consider whether they're going to accept it or not. So it wasn't so much that they focused that much on the text messages after they got through it. They went back to the butt dials and the phone calls and what'd you do with your phone, as we just saw. So I think there's, again, we don't have from the prosecution what they are saying from an expert was the cause of John O'Keefe's death, right? So as we're listening to all of this information, you're thinking, okay, well, if he was hit by a car, don't forget, we also talked about the plow on the front of the Jeep.
Yes, we did.
Is this something that could have happened because he struck him by accident with a plow? Could Karen Reed have hit him with the car? But if someone would tell us, that his injuries are excluded from a fight, then I might have listened to the testimony in a different way. So you sort of take away with, okay, we know this. I think we all have heard things like this happen in our personal lives. This wasn't like a breaking news story that this happened, but does it go to motive? Were the people angry enough about this to actually take action to kill someone? But I don't know, because I haven't heard from an expert witness on the prosecution side that has created the universe for me on how I can consider this based on the evidence that they're presenting about John O'Keefe's cause of death.
Which we haven't actually addressed directly. We've only heard he was bleeding, one of his eyes was swollen. We actually don't have a report that says this is how this man passed away. And so I agree with you. As a juror, I would think it very hard what I'm supposed to be gleaning from different testimony, because I'm not quite sure where we're going.
Right, and to plug those things into the different things you're thinking, right?
Right.
I mean, it's so obviously the defense is listing 5,000 things that could have happened to get one juror to have reasonable doubt. And I have to say that the past couple of days, it does seem like ADA Lally has been playing on the offense, like trying to get things out there, like having Brian Higgins say flirty text before he's accused of it. But it was another frustrating day and an awkward day and a hot day.
Awkward and hot.
Yes.
All right, don't go anywhere. We have air conditioning here, so chill out for a little bit. The jury certainly has a lot to think about over the long weekend. After the break, we're bringing in criminal defense attorney Morgietta Durissier. Her thoughts on today's proceedings coming up.
Is there a reason that you felt compelled to bring an attorney with you for your testimony as a witness in a homicide investigation?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Trial, I should say.
Sustained.
You brought your attorney with you who's sitting right behind you, correct?
That is not my attorney.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were his attorney. My mistake. Where's your attorney?
I don't know. He might be in the courthouse.
Is he in the building?
Well, welcome back to Canton Confidential. Joining me at the table right now is Morgietta Doricier, a criminal defense attorney with Bay State Law Group. I just want to start with what we just heard. Why is that the first question out of the gate? Why do you have an attorney?
All of these witnesses are essentially on a stage right now, and are you going to believe them or are you not going to believe them? And so the defense is doing exactly what they've been doing before, going for the bias, going for the credibility. Why do you need an attorney if whatever you're going to say is going to present to be innocent? But the reality is, all of the witnesses actually took a look at the docket sheet. They all have attorneys, and no right person, especially in a case like this, would present themselves in front of a jury or the world without an attorney. Well,
that's why I thought it was sort of really, is that where we're starting? However, having said that, this was for me a rare moment. You explained it to me, but the jury left the room so that they could bring that attorney in. This was much later in cross-examination, so that the defense could ask a question, and that gave the lawyer time to say to Brian Higgins what he should say. What was that?
I think it really was just an opportunity to make sure he was protecting his client. He was obviously going to make a statement that was going to be recorded. They were talking about a pre-recorded statement and whether perjury was involved or not. So I think it was just a moment to just give him that attorney-client privilege before he made a further statement.
Why were there such long sidebars today? They didn't seem necessarily frequent. They just felt very long.
So, sometimes when you're getting into the nuances, especially when you have a federal agent on the stand, there are a lot of objections, sustained or not sustained, that I think the judge wants to make sure the jury gets, and not a lot of bias just because he's a federal agent. So I presume that's what a lot of that was.
We just spoke with Sue about the text messages that were read aloud, and I would assume, and you tell me again, that was to show that Karen Reed was not secure in her relationship with John O'Keefe, that there were problems in her relationship. Did that help the prosecution or the defense? Did it move the needle?
I honestly do believe that as damning as the text messages sound and read out loud, it didn't really point to Karen Reed being guilty, right? It wasn't a statement where you could point and say, aha, she's admitting that she wants to do something criminal in nature. Was it good? No. It came out very distasteful in the light for her, and that's a light that we haven't seen, right? You know, the first couple of witnesses were a lot about the scene and what happened, but this is the first time that we're seeing kind of her character. So as far as her character goes, it wasn't the greatest. But as far as her guilt goes, it's really not there either.
Well, the cross-examination is going to continue on Tuesday, so we didn't get Brian Higgins on and off the stand in this one day. But earlier this week, the defense said outside of court, because they like to talk to reporters, which the prosecution does not, said, oh, when Brian Higgins takes the stand, it's going to be fireworks. Have we seen fireworks?
I think we saw a couple sparks today.
Okay.
The cell phone is a huge spark, not only just because of the evidence allegedly being destroyed, but it's a federal agent with an allegation of destroying the phone. Now, there were some questions about whether or not there was an order or not an order, and if he had the right to do it or not the right to do it. But I still think it's a little spark. You know, there's a cadence that you have to follow as a federal agent or anyone, with authority and power. And I think the sparks are coming.
That's what it felt to me like. Maybe we're just starting to light the fire on that one. Okay. You need to stay around as well, because what we're going to do when we come back is Sue O'Connell will join the conversation, because I want to see these two interact, keeping track of the questions that have gone unanswered after one whole month of trial. Sue has a lot of questions. You have a lot of questions. Stay with us. You're watching Canton Confidential. From what we're hearing from you at home, the more testimony we watch, the more questions start to develop. So Sue is one of those people who have a lot of unanswered questions. And let's just remind everybody, we are a month into this trial. I know it hasn't been in, exactly a month of testimony, but a month into this trial. And Sue, we can even just start with the organization. You talked about it before, just laying out the storyline, trying to make sense of it all.
JC, I struggle with being a person who's in this business where we tell stories, right? We want to have a beginning, an end, and a middle, and I'd like your feedback on this as well. I was saying earlier that I feel like the prosecution not giving me testimony from an expert on what they are alleging how John O'Keefe died is not helping me to organize what I'm hearing, Because sometimes I forget it's prosecution's turn at bat. I mean, is that what are the jurors thinking?
To be honest, I would not be surprised if the jury is confused. The way that they're laying out the story is not very story-like, right? And again, we haven't even got to the cause of death. Today we got some sort of light shed on Karen, but maybe that should have gone in the beginning, right? If you're the prosecution, you want to put your fireworks in the beginning, but the beginning was a couple weeks of just repetitive information. So it has come out very confusing. I said from the beginning, I wonder if that's their strategy, but it is very confusing.
Do you
even
even remember the first couple of people on the stand?
Well, remember we learned that she spoiled the kid. She took them to Dunkin' Donuts. They had a good relationship. I mean, everything we heard about Karen until we got to the Aruba trip, which again also seems like normal relationship stuff. It wasn't until now that they're actually presenting a picture of her and how their relationship may not have been as good as people like whose is, but as good as it is.
Right. And I think that's relevant to the overall case, but it doesn't really help the prosecution move that needle forward towards her guilt, which is what they're trying to prove. They really haven't got that needle moved just as yet.
Well, okay, so for me, you know, you're waiting for that aha moment, right? Like, oh, there it is. There's the piece that, whether you believe it or not, but there's the little nugget. To Sue's point, why no Emmy at this point? Why no ER doctor? Why no cause of death? We just know he died.
I think a lot of it is that there's a lot of witnesses that they want to put on, right? And the question is, what order do you put them in? They have to lay out the facts somewhere, one way or another. And I think they're just not really doing the greatest job at it. But I agree, put some of the information in the beginning. And I think that a lot of that hasn't really happened yet, and I don't know why.
So some of the other questions that I had, too, which I keep getting, you're not going to be able to answer these, but you're going to help us how the jurors will do this. I mean, I am so confused about the timeline of Karen's taillight. Who saw it? Who described it as cracked? Who took it apart? If I'm in the jury room afterwards, I know the defense is going to get up and they're going to, refute some of this. But if I wanted to talk about this, and I didn't take notes on it, and JC's another juror, can I ask to look at her notes, or can I ask the judge if I can see some evidence? How does that happen?
So the jurors are supposed to take the information and facts as they remember it. Whatever they took down in their notebooks, whatever they have in their memory, that is factual information that they're supposed to utilize. They're going to deliberate. They're going to communicate, but whatever evidence has been admitted into evidence is what they can use, plus whatever memory that they remember.
Okay, so it's going to be long. Do you have one more question?
Yeah, I mean,
we have a viewer question, too.
Oh, let's go to the viewer question.
All right, can we just bring up that from Michelle D? Because she just basically wants to know, we heard John O'Keefe had security cameras. We've seen some of that. We know bars, we have security cameras. We've seen all of that. But what about Brian Albert with security cameras at his home? Because, of course, this is the home in question. Or even, we've seen lots of things where it's the Ring doorbell from across the street that captured things. We haven't heard anything of that. Should we expect to, or it just doesn't exist?
I wonder whether or not it has been addressed in pretrial. Some of the information may not be relevant, or there may be some privacy information that would preclude them from introducing that. But I think that would be helpful, at least to see what was captured in the neighborhood. I don't know what other evidence will be presented, but I hope we get something like that. I don't know, Sue, if you heard anything that.
Well, Michelle D., thank you, by the way, for sending in that question. I believe, I just remember something from Brian Albert's wife saying something about the doors never locked because we have all these kids in there, sort of going in and out.
Right.
That's all I remember.
I just want to ask a quick question about research. If I wanted to look up how often butt dials usually happen and I was a juror, is that the kind of research they're not supposed to do?
They're not supposed to utilize their cell phones at all to do any independent research. Being a juror is really difficult. Mm-hmm. They have a huge task ahead of them, and they're supposed to kind of be in this closed box where information comes to you only from what you hear, and even confusing with objections, which one is stricken, which one is included. So it's really difficult. Wow. No outside research.
I did a butt dial yesterday, and I texted the person to document that it was a butt dial. That's where I'm at being in this room.
Just in
case I ever have to give that phone up to the FBI. As you know, I will as soon as they show up.
You are never going to have to do that. I can say that with full assurance. All right. Don't go anywhere, please, because coming up, we have a look at next week's court schedule. There are some little things you got to know. It's not going to be the same, and also where you can watch it. That's coming up next. Next week, the court is taking a few days off, and so is Canton Confidential. So on Monday, the courthouse is closed for Memorial Day. Tuesday, though, is expected to be a full day of testimony. Again, we're going to resume with cross on Brian Higgins, but then the jury will have the rest of the week off. We will have a complete recap for you Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, and then you can take some time to catch up on earlier editions of Canton Confidential. We'd like to sum it all up here, so nice small bites that you can go and see. But before we go tonight, just a quick reminder of how we got here. A man lost his life and a family was changed forever. John O'Keefe was a veteran of the Boston Police Department, a son, a brother, a loving uncle. We thank you for watching